Great. So if you guys had to describe if you guys had to describe this new A-Z album compared to the previous record, give a quick description of it. What would your description be? If someone comes up to you and says, you have another album coming out, what does it sound like compared to the first one? What would you say to them?
You're up, Nick.
Oh, I was going to say that's a Mark question because I didn't work on the first record. To me, the first record sort of tapped into a 70s vibe, and I think this taps a little bit more, maybe because of my, time frame, more into an 80s vibe. This to me sounds like, an aggressive version of early 80s Journey. Toto, another great reference point, just with a little bit more beef and a little bit more chunk in the guitar tone, maybe. But that's sort of how I would look at the reference point. But I think this is a Mark question more than a Nick question.
So sure. Nick basically just called me old with that one, but okay.
Not much older than me, pal.
There's a different approach, obviously. Songwriting, it's heavier, but it's not heavier in a grungy, grindy kind of thing. I like to sometimes go back, and I kind of tripped on this the other day with, you have the first 3 Journey albums, and, no Steve Perry, but the playing's kind of like intense, and it's all over the place. It's jazz, fusion, rock, metal, whatever. And then you have Steve Perry come into it later, who, on that, especially the Infinity album with Wheel in the Sky and other things, before it really went commercial, they were kind of in that thing. So, not to keep referencing Journey, but it does have kind of that kind of thing to it. Edge of the blade, separate ways. There's a heaviness. The other thing I think that's a major difference, there's 2 major differences, is the guitar playing and the way the approach was taken, especially in the mixing of and the ability to take the sound and really make it happen. That Simone took care of with that, as far as from a mix point of view. But the role of the keyboards. In the first record, the role of the keyboards were more Yes, Genesis, because that's where Viv was coming from, kind of more of that lighter kind of thing. But this one is definitely John Lord. Jimmy's all about the B3 and the Leslie and that kind of thing. It's just, this is more of I can see this. The one thing I really like about this record is I can see this record letting us play with bands that are a little heavier, where we only had the first record in that style. We could have never gone that far as the heaviness. Still has the big choruses, still has the big hooks. There's no 12-minute songs. It's just like in your face. You're supposed to get up and move. That's what it's about. You're supposed to be able to feel it in the groove and the pulse, and then all the frosting that goes on the top.
That sounds like a good description. I would probably say my description, at least from what I've heard, is a combination of what you and Nick said. Like, when you talk about kind of going, like 80s a little bit, Edge of the Blade was like the first thing that I thought of actually when listening to the stuff, but it doesn't sound dated. It sounds a lot more modern than that, but it's the same kind of songwriting in a sense. And yeah, I mean, there is a difference. I think the songs are just as catchy as the first album, but I think it's just a little bit of a heavier record.
I think also there's a little bit more of syncopated playing at times, and it definitely a little bit more progressive per se, as not just boom tap boom tap boom tap. There's things, and you can catch it after the first 4 bars, but it's not so Survivor, REO Speedwagon, kind of like just straight, kind of great songs, but just straight. We kind of get a little funky at times, and but it works. I mean, it works amazingly well.
And the album sounds good.
Simone is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, you can only do so much if the raw ingredients don't sound great. And Mark is so dialed in with his drums, and reasonably dialed in at this point on good guitar tone. And certainly it's stuff that Simone knows how to mix, because he's done, probably 3 or 4 records with my guitar tone now that he helped actually dial in. So yeah, and then Philip has an unbelievable bass tone. And the other thing is, in contrast, the Redemption, by the way, this is by no means a AC/DC record. There's a lot going on, not to take anything away from them. There's a lot going on here. There's less going on. You know, Redemption's been described as like a 12-layer chocolate cake. Sometimes there's an awful lot going on. Here it breathes a little bit more. So I think the ability for Simone to make it just sound as good as it can sound without having to service 7 different counterpoints that are happening at the same time frees him up to make it really sound great.
Yeah.
To Nick's point, people don't realize this. I mean, older people realize, younger people don't realize that a mix engineer is just as important as anybody in the band.
Mm-hmm.
I've done enough records with enough different guys, and there's a true story. Before the first record, again, my whole thing was, we're going to do this the right way. I don't care what it costs. We're just going to do it the right way. So I auditioned or sent out a track to like 7 or 8 mix guys. I mean, we're talking Grammy. I was fortunate enough to be hooked into a Grammy Award guy, 9 Grammys, whatever. All the way to whoever and whatever, nobody you ever heard of, and guys, serious guys in between. Greg Bissonette turned me on to a bunch of different pro guys. No one even came close to Simone. I mean, not even close. It was so obvious who the guy was that was going to do it. Plus, he's the greatest guy in the world. He's that guy that I almost feel like during this record, he's sitting right here because I'll write him an email and say, hey, can you take care of this? Boom, taken care of. Hey, Nick thinks this. Can you take care of it? Boom, done. I mean,
yeah,
it's like your hand is going through the computer to his console,
Yeah, I mean, and you saw me obviously on the page kind of go on a rant, and just to give Nick a little bit of a reference, I was referencing, 26 years ago when I started doing this, I probably had 50 emails a month from publicists and people at labels. Now I get like 1,000 emails a week. And one of the things, I don't know, there was one night I didn't have much going on and I was listening to a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, and even some of these bands that are signed, it's almost as if they recorded these records and they're just using like the basic templates that some of these plugins have, recording the record and sending it off. And I was like, man, it's like there's like 30 of these albums that sounded almost identical. And when I posted a rant about that a little bit, and I wasn't against digital recording. What I was saying is that these people are just being lazy about what they are doing. And it's like, man, the records were almost unlistenable. And Mark, and you talked about it a little bit. You talked about recording and mixing the album the right way. And again, the fact that the last album sounded so good, because you did that, right? And I think I think you've done it on this one, Nick. I think those last 2 Redemption albums, just the production and the mix on them were phenomenal. And the thing is, you guys did them the right way, and that's kind of what I want to emphasize when I tell people, yeah, I've heard 3 rough mixes of this album so far. And the rough mixes sound good.
You're gonna be blown away by the finished product.
Yeah.
No.
It's the funny thing of it is I kind of look back and early on in your career, you're just happy to be doing whatever you're doing, and everything sounds great.
Yeah.
But to really have, I can sit down and mark pivotal points of like the learning curve, and then you're going into automatic pilot. You just know, like when we were working on the songs, I knew kind of like, okay, Mark, I know you're experimenting, you're trying kind of like weird stuff, but okay, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I think the experience, and you call it the old man syndrome or whatever, but I really think this day and age, that experience when you're making records as compared to just banging out songs in your computer, really show from guys who have done it a long time and have really perfected it and are continuously to strive for bigger, better, and a better sound and better this, better that, as compared to, like you said, let's crank up the computer, put the plugins in, cut it to the graph, to the grid. There is a great thing that Rick Beato just did. It's about 12 minutes long.
I love him. I love his channel.
There's one he has one that's like 2 hours long, but that got a little too long. 12 minutes of like what's wrong with music today or whatever. And it's all those things. The plugins, cut into the grid, drum machines, consistent hits, blah, blah, blah. It's like he kind of, and it doesn't help that, everybody's listening on little earbuds that are $29.95 compared to like really listening to music. So, it's interesting. But no, I another thing and Nick and I talked about it too. It's like, if you're going to do it right. That's all there is to it. Do it right. And the people that appreciate it, they'll get it. They'll understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, that Rick Beato video is actually very good. But the thing is, like you said, most people are not listening to music the way that the three of us probably grew up listening to it. I mean, a lot of people, some people have really good headphones. My son has a really high end pair of noise cancellation headphones that he can listen to music and he doesn't have to disturb anybody with it. But yeah, everyone's listening to $30 earbuds on Amazon.